So I've been doing some orthographic drawings in Krita and bringing them over to Blender and playing around with creating whatever it is that I've been sketching. And I was kind of realizing that I probably should be using grids and guides while doing this. We're going to go over to Krita and set up some grids and guides over there. And so we can have a little bit of easier of a time creating whatever kind of images we want. We're going to do perspective and orthographic and isometric on top of that. Stick to the end of the video. We'll try doing a quick isometric drawing, and then we'll try to push that out into Blender and actually model off of the isometric as well. So that's something you might be interested in. And so let's just start a new document real quick. We'll just do design template A3, load it up. And so by default, this is what you get, right? Like your color picker up here. But what we're going to do is go to view, show grid, and you get the regular grid here like so. Now usually it looks a lot worse than this. What we're going to want to do is go to settings, dockers, and turn on the grids docker. There's grids and guides, and also tool options if you don't have this one on as well. So I got tool options up here in the top left, and grids and guides is hidden back here, but you can pretty much drag these things around and place them wherever you need to, reorder them even. And so this grid by default is pretty rough. It's hard to look at. It usually comes in looking something like this. It's really bad, right? So what we're going to do is simplify it. First up, the subdivision count. This could be useful potentially, but I don't think it draws real well in Krita. So just drop it to 1. You'll be better off for it, I think. Also, it's usually like a dark gray or something like that. You'd be tempted to just bump this up to make it a light gray. That could work for you. However, I'm going to set it to black. And the alpha channel here, this is the opacity to it, right? So basically drop it like 25 and that'll work out quite well. So we can zoom into 100%. We can see what's going on here. And so now we have a grid, which is great. And so this could help if you know you're just sketching out kind of like blueprint drawings and stuff like that, right? You can go ahead and just doodle on it if you wanted to on a new layer. Also, pro tip here, configure Krita. You have a section to change all your key settings, right? Shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts right here. You can change a couple settings if you want. If you type in snap, look for toggle snap to assistance. You can map that to whatever you want. I just overrode S because it's usually set to smooth. Not a big deal. That might be one you want, but also like your brush tool, things like that. Might be a little bit harder to find this one. The freehand brush tool I've set to 1, and the line tool over here is set to 2. So you can see you type in line tool 2. Little things like that can go a long way. I also have like W as my lasso select, so it's all on my left hand. I don't have to use my tablet or nothing like that. Just use the keyboard. But anyways, so we have a grid. That's great. We can change it, modify it. We can make it bigger, smaller. That's fun. But the best part about this is actually right here, the type. It's set to rectangle, so that's good for orthographic, but we could switch it over to isometric and we'll get something like this. Now by default, it's pretty rough to look at. It's at 45-degree angles. So you might want to try changing this to 30, okay? And 30 will work out very well for you. Now, I just happen to have released on my Gumroad some time ago something called Isometric Drawing Tools. We're going to utilize that here when we go to Blender. But any isometric drawing that's roughly at 30 degrees like this should work with that technically. We're going to try it out and see what happens here later at the very end of this video. But you can change the cell spacing too. Set it to 37. Should line up with the grids in Blender, I think. We'll find out later. We'll turn this back on and draw on it later. And so if we press 2 in this case, I press 2, I get the line tool. So the line tool, if you hold shift, you can see what's happening here. It snaps to, pretty much snaps to the same angles, which is good. Kind of what you want. Wanted to point that out. Now, we're going to go ahead and move on from this. Let's go to view. We can do show grid, turn that off for a second. Clear the canvas. There's another thing called the drawing assistant tool right down here. You have different options for this. You could do splines or eclipses or whatever the case, right? But 2 that are extremely useful we'll go over, which is going to be the parallel ruler, which is really nice. and then also 2-point perspective. There's also a fisheye perspective, which is nice. But this is going to allow you to basically create lines in any direction, and you can start to snap to these things if you wanted to. So if you just wanted to do something like this, a cross section, you switch to the brush tool now. Okay, and you'll see that we can snap to assistant here. Okay, and let's see if I can get it to actually draw here. I think I chose white by accident. I color sampled it. Yeah, so we can snap vertically or horizontally with those tools, right? And so if we were to set up more, we could do that. By the way, this lets you move it around. You can turn the eye on and off. You can delete them as well. We're not going to do that yet, but let's do another one, let's say at a weird angle. Okay. Go back to the brush tool. You'll see here, you can always do that weird angle now, right? If we wanted to. Really useful tool. All right. Now, if you want to turn Snapping Assistant off, you can. It's helpful to snap to a single line, not try to snap to both. But Snap Assistant here, you can turn it on and off as needed. That's where S comes into play, that shortcut. And so you don't have to always, I'm going to keep that in none. Like if you wanted to go along the lines, but you don't want to go along the lines at a certain point, you would just press S. And now you can just freely sketch whatever you got to sketch. You see what I'm saying? So that S being snap is really nice, in my opinion. All right, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and go back to the guides tool. We're going to delete these now. We can switch to 2-point perspective as well. 2-point perspective you can use as wide as you want. It's a little bit harder to use it as it goes further, but you click, shift click, and then you can drag out, kind of pick a subject area, I guess, if you would. And so, let's spun everything around. There you go. Oh, bad habit. That's a blender habit, I think. Anyway, so this guide, you can of course modify this when you go back to the drawing assistant tool. You can turn the opacity up and down. You can change the color. It's really nice. But a lot of times it's even when you do that, you can change also, usually you can change the density in here. I think you got to click this actually. Yeah, so you got to click that again. You can change the density. But it can be really distracting even then. So what you might want to do instead is when you are looking at it like this, you can go to View, Show Painting Assistance. You can turn that off. Right, now you'll just have the crosshair. The crosshair is really useful. You'll get used to using this thing perhaps, but it's kind of hard to use it like free-handed or whatever. But when you snap to assistance, it can be quite useful. You kind of tell where you're going to end up going and whatnot, which is nice. But if that still distracts you even then, you can turn that off by clicking Show Assistant Previews. Turn that off. And now it'll still snap. It's just you won't see nothing. And sometimes it can be kind of harder to use in my opinion. Right, but that's the options that are available for you. So you can take full advantage of them, right? Just like so. You can also have this work with the isometric grid. So what we can do is let's go back to the drawing assistant real quick. Always forget the icon, but it's that one. Okay, so let's go ahead and change it back to those parallel rulers. Okay, we're going to turn the grid back on. It's still set up as an isometric grid. Might need to change it a little bit perhaps. No, we're okay. All right, so let's delete the layer, create a layer. There we go. Go back to the brush tool. So you can see we can snap to a single line, snap to assistance. And so now when we use the brush here, we'll make it really small, like a 1 up here. You could type in here. You gotta right click it. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So we can go back to the assistant tool now. Parallel rulers. Click. And you're just going to follow the line as long as you can here. The longer the line, the more accurate it will be. Click. probably want to zoom in a little bit too if possible. So you can always come back and just get it as precise as possible by grabbing these and placing them where they need to go exactly. See, that one wasn't too far off. All right. All right. We're getting there. So it's much more precise than it was, and that's what you want. Okay. And last but not least, you can click, hold shift, and click. And that's your last one that we're going to be doing. Go back to the brush tool. Okay. And for some reason, they are still here in the scene, or is that just something I drew? No, they're still here in the scene. So let's do this. Let's go back to Drawing Assistant. Turn those off. Now we can go back and they appeared to still be here. That's kind of interesting. Let's do View and Show Painting Assistance. Let's see if that helps. Assistant Previews. Okay. So turning Show Painting Assistance off actually helped that one. So let's turn that off. We can use the Show Assistant Preview if we wanted to. Not really required, but what's going to happen now is that as we use this brush here, and we have snap to single line, snap to assistant, we can just kind of freehand on all the grids as much as we want. Now, for some reason, I can't go up in the vertical right now. Let's see. Maybe I got to turn that off. Or I messed something up. It shouldn't have had an issue, so maybe I deleted something by accident. Oh, because I turned them off. That's what happened, I guess. Right. You can't see them because you got to turn that back on. A little bit of a weird, quirky kind of a bug or something, whatever that is. Anyways, let's go ahead and try it now and see if this works. Yay, there it goes. So snapping to assistant. We can go into vertical. We can go along these. We can go along the other one, hopefully. Yeah, we can. Okay. So we don't have to use line tools necessarily. We can just freehand this using snap, right? Like regular freehand and then snapping on. Yeah, so this is good because now we can create whatever we want to create. You're designing a house or something, I don't know. You'll have pretty much perfect lines here, possibly. You do like the floor. There's something interesting we could try. Let's try doing like the floor plan of the house. And whatever reason, started going that way. You have to be kind of precise with the initial start of your stroke. Get it to go the right direction. Sometimes it just doesn't work out too well. But yeah, say you're making a house or whatever, and I'm gonna start with just like that floor plan idea. Maybe you want to connect these two. You can turn snapping off now, possibly, or leave it on. This will work with the line tool as well. So I think that'll be fine there. Maybe you want to design the wall for it. See where this is going, right? Maybe you want to do a door. Measure the door size. Make different grid sizes if you needed to. Door wall thickness here. Maybe. Really good for pre-planning, doing 3D assets. Like your block in basically. But you can model off this. Now, it might not be to scale unless you're using grid I set up, I think. I'm not even entirely sure if that will come out to scale even then. It'll match up to the grid, so I guess it'll be to scale. If you figure you'd have to kind of interpolate what these things are, right? Like 10 centimeter, and then 1 meter would be a certain size. And you'd probably want to draw to those. So, all right, let's see. What else can we do in here that's more interesting? Let's try doing like a little bar thing instead of like just a simple wall. Let's do like a little tabletop or something. It's like this thick. We'll bring it down this way. That's kind of a hard one to do, actually, now that I think about it, because I'm trying to figure out the height here. I can't really see the height. You know what I'm saying? Height's like right here. So it would go in this way, going this way, right there. I need to do the height. 30 units. Oh, this isn't quite 30 units. 30 centimeters a second. 3 units, or whatever you want to call it. So this wouldn't exist over here, obviously, right? Get rid of that. Not really that needed. Maybe you want to do some cabinetry and things like that. You can design it all right here. This one, of course, would be right here. It would actually come out pretty much right there, wouldn't it? I'm going to put it off just a little bit so that I know something different, but that's something you may or may not want to do. Who knows? Okay, so we got some stuff to play with. Let's go take this over into Blender. How can we do this in Blender? Well, first up, I'm just going to go ahead and this is a 4K, a little bit bigger than a 4K. So I'm just going to save this as is. Probably could crop it, but we're going to save it as is. A PNG file to the desktop, say building, whatever it is. All right, now, if you have those ISO tools that I was talking about on the Gumroad there, you go to my website, you can get them. You'll find a Blender file in that. In that Blender file, got it saved all the way under utilities, ISO drawing tools. So you can see isometric scene.blend. This is the one that loads up. This is a camera that we're looking through. We can load it in an image. Now, normally I would recommend drawing on the image I provided in that, but we should be able to load up any isometric view as long as it's a 30-degree angle, I believe. We'll try it. We'll see. So we'll see what happens here. So we'll go find that drawing real quick, the BLDG one, building, and we'll click open and see what happens here. It might stretch it out. It might not. Not real sure what it's going to do. Its frame method is stretch. You try fit or you can try crop as well. So those are a couple options there to you. Stretch would, yeah, of course, contort it all. Fit would shrink it. Crop should frame it about right, and then should keep the aspect ratio though, right? So those two keep the aspect ratio. And because of that, now we're in a camera view. First off, so if we were to orbit out, you can see there's the camera. But if we hit tilde key, we can view through camera again, and we get right back to it. This is kind of fun because we could create something like, say, a plane, right? Go into edit mode, hit Alt S, and we can just start lining up to what we see in front of us. Because we already drew on a grid, we know for a fact that, and it was an isometric view at 30 degrees, we can do numbers like this. This is where this gets more interesting because now that we've done this, we could figure like here, the wall starts somewhere over here. Or maybe we got the drawing off a little bit. So maybe we just do EZ off of this plane. And we make the wall a little bit larger, perhaps. But we can still take this plane, press Y, that rips it. Or we can press P and separate the selection even. We can go over here. We can loop cut on this. Control R to loop cuts. And now, just like knock out that door there real quick. Okay? Pretty interesting, right? We can actually take the whole section here. Press E. I'm going to do X. Don't do Z. That's normal usually. But that little blue line that popped up, press X instead. And just press EX and push it back. Hold Shift while doing it. We'll get this result. I think it's inverted, so I'm going to press Alt-N and recalculate outside. And that'll be potentially a wall unit if you wanted to do it that way. This one here might be a little bit more difficult. A lot of times just the plane to start with is useful. So you can do cuts where you need them. You can see that one that went out to the other side there. We probably don't need this one. Get rid of that one now. Control X to dissolve that. But this is the thing to remember. You want to usually start. You more than likely will want to start on a plane or a box or something. Line that up to whatever it is you're trying to create, and then model everything from it. Okay, that way it's all in proportion to each other. Because you can have a lot of weird camera perspective issues if you don't do that. But you could say like these two little vertices here. I can press J and join them. This one I can press Control B and V and chamfer it a little bit. So you can see Control B, V to bevel that vertex. Or Shift, is it Shift Control B? Yeah, Shift Control B will work as well. And so this comes out just a little bit here, right here. We might be able to correct this a little bit later on, but let's get rid of, I want it like a point right here in the middle. Let's right click, poke face, right? I just want that little point there. So when I select all this, like so, I can use that later on maybe if I needed to. You can see this cuts a little bit quicker than what we have right now, but that's okay because we're just going to press E and we're going to hit Z in this case so it goes up. And we're just going to line it up as best as we can. It's not going to be perfect usually, but it can get pretty close. And so that's the main thing. And you can see here that this section here, if we press GG twice, might or may not work. Let's see. That's not going to work. This one, nope, that's not going to work either. Let's switch to normal. Okay. We can press G and Z now, and we can move this one back perhaps. But it's pulling these sides in. That's not really what I want either. Let's grab this edge. Let's just move it globally, not on normal. It's GY. Let's move that back this way. Let's take this one and GX and move it back that way. Yeah, that's what we want. That's the thickness we were looking for. Okay, and then these ones here, we could do the same thing if we want to match the drawing better. GY, EX. Okay. So we jump out, look at this in 3D now. Hold Z. Take all this and just dissolve it. Control X. Select the faces and dissolve it. Control X. You can select all of this. Hit Control Number plus. It grows the selection. E separates selection. So now we have a floor tile potentially that we could have made. We got the wall. We're well on our way. So we could design things in 2D and translate them over to 3D. And grids and guides just help this become a lot easier. It's a little bit weird at first trying to model this way using an image and using Blender at the same time. But once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. I don't utilize it a whole lot, but if you're doing like floor plans and stuff and you're way quicker at just sketching them out, then surely you should probably utilize some of those things. You can always clean these up later on to make them more perfect like, right? But definitely a great way to start blocking in something and getting some things going here because you might just need a tabletop real quick in this area. And maybe you want to do some, just press inset and I. Maybe you just want to do some little areas like this. Rip them, pressing Y. Actually, separate them real quick. We're going to separate these ones. Leave that one like that. Actually, let's do a loop cut here. A loop cut here, a loop cut here. Oh, we'll actually, I don't know, maybe, I don't know what to do with that one. We'll leave it alone. Won't touch it. I'm just aligning these SZ and 0 you could use to align. And then maybe like bevel these real quick. Okay, so these areas here we could turn into maybe like little drawers or whatever. So we're going to P separate selection. We have this excess left over. A lot of times you don't actually cut the holes for the cabinets in games, so you could just, we'll get back to it in a sec. You could just fill them basically. All right, inset, hold control, so press I, hold control. Give them the right appropriate amount of depth, maybe a little bit of taper to them. There you go, you got cabinetry going on already, which is great. / on this to isolate it. These things probably, you can just press F. Just select it all, press F. And then these ones here, we could dissolve potentially edges. All right, so now we'll just have like floater drawers basically. We can make little handles and stuff we want on here. Or whatever else you might want there anyways. Towels. This one's kind of hard to line up actually because of the way we did this, but let's rotate it. This should be about 45 degrees. Could be. Maybe a little bit less. Yeah, so we'd want to go back through and kind of remodel this perhaps a little bit. Or straighten it all up before we start doing drawers and stuff. But I just want to give you an idea of what you could do here. It's really not that crazy. If you want to just eyeball it and line of sight it, you probably could get away with that. Use normal or local, one or the other. If local doesn't work, use normal. That one will work out. Sometimes it doesn't. Let's try local. Yeah, local works in this case. When you rotate in object mode, it updates the orientation of the rotation, right? And so local will work there now. But if you didn't do that in object mode, you did it in edit mode, it wouldn't work out. So local's awesome for a lot of reasons, but that's just one of them right there. So if you wanted to make a little piece like this, do that. You can S, Shift Z, you can do numbers like that, all at an angle, which is fun. A little much for a Krita tutorial, right? But it's all right. I think it's fun to know these kinds of things because you never know what you might do with these kinds of drawings. And now you know you can completely go into 3D with it, an isometric one, anyways. Yeah, so that's it for the video. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and check you out next time. All right, take care.